So we'll begin the class. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatatam Bhuvignanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. So we begin today's class of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We were discussing Sri Ramakrishna's birth anniversary, which took place in Dakshineshwar on 11th March 1883. So that's the date given. So Sri Ramakrishna's birth anniversary, according to the Hindu calendar, fell on 11th March in 1883. As you all know, the birth anniversary changes because we follow the lunar calendar there, and the dates change. Either it is in February or March. So this year in 1883, it happened to be March 11th. And there was a lot of devotional songs going on. There was a lot of joy. People were singing Kirtan. Kirtan can be Shama Kirtan or Krishna Kirtan. There are two types of Kirtan in Bengal. They are devotional songs led by an accomplished singer and accompanied by a chorus, which normally sings song on the Divine Mother, the feminine aspect of God, the Divine Mother, or it can be on Krishna. So Vaishnavas sing Kirtana, which is known as Vaishnava Kirtana. The songs, the devotional group songs or chorus songs on Sri Krishna or Vishnu, they are known as Vaishnava Kirtanas. And then there are Shakta Kirtanas. Shakta means those who worship God as the Divine Mother, as Shakti. So they sing, they do the Kirtana, which is known as Shama Sangeet or Shama Kirtan. Shama means the dark one. So normally there are songs on Mother Kali or Durga or some other aspect of the Divine Mother. So here Sri Ramakrishna is joining the devotees. It is his birthday and a lot of devotees have come and they are singing a song which is very significant. It was a song written by Naresh Chandra. It is a beautiful song expressing the problem of the difficulty of making spiritual progress while living in the world. So the worldly pursuits, as Jesus said in the Bible, God and mammon cannot go together. You can't worship God and mammon at the same time. You have to choose. So if you follow the path of God, naturally your attraction or attachment to the things that are worldly, things that take you towards the gross, things that make you go towards the world in a sense, get attached to the gross things of the world is what mammon means. In the Bible, when you say mammon, God and mammon, you cannot have both God and mammon at the same time. So one has to make a choice. How much of God or how far is my desire to go towards Godhood or the divinity? And for that, one has to slowly detach oneself from things that makes one worldly. So it is explained through a beautiful song where the sadhaka, Naresh Chandra, in this case, the poet explains how his mind was soaring very high. And suddenly, because of the winds of Maya, Maya is a statement of fact. According to Vedanta, Maya is something that drags the mind from a high spiritual plane to a lower gross plane of the world. So it's an illusion based on ignorance of one's true nature. So when one thinks that one is the body or one is According to Vedanta, we have 5 levels of existence. It begins with the Annamaya Kosha, the gross physical body. Then we have Pranamaya Kosha, which is the life force, the life forces that we need to run the body. So that is also part of our personality. So there are different levels of personality within this one human being or human personality, which begins with the gross body and the life forces that animate this gross body. And then we have the Manomaya Kosha, the mental sheath, which can be termed in English as the reactive mind. The mind is a very complex thing in Vedanta. Mind is not as simple as we think. It's not just some activity, neurophysiological, or some activity of the brain which gives rise to thoughts. Brain is a medium through which thoughts are expressed, and it helps us to connect with the world outside. So brain is just a conduit through which we express our thoughts in action. Our sense organs, the Gyanendriyas, the 5 sense organs of perception, and the 5 sense organs of action. So altogether there are 10 organs, and plus Vedanta says there is the reactive mind, the mind which just responds to stimulus from the world outside. Whatever we perceive, there is a stimulus and we respond. So that is known as the reactive mind. That is also considered as a sense organ according to some schools of Vedanta. So we have 5 organs of perception: the eyes, the nose, the ear, and so many other things, the tongue. So taste, smell, and all those things. So we interact with the world, gross world, through the sense organs, and the mind helps us to do that. And the mind, which is also a finer form of the prana, or it is slightly higher than, or a subtler form of prana, forms the 3rd level of our personality, which is known as Manomaya Kosha. So the mind, the mental sheath, literally translated, Kosha means a sheath. So we have an external sheath, which is the body, which is animated by the Pranamaya Kosha, the life forces, the breathing, the circulation, blood circulation, digestion, and all the forces which are necessary for the survival of the body. And beyond that is the mental sheath, which helps the sense organs, the gross as well as the subtle brain centers, to communicate with the outside world. So that is the Manomaya Kosha. But there is one more kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is a finer aspect of the mind, which helps us to determine what is good, what is bad, what is desirable, what is not desirable, what is the spirit, what is matter. And as Jesus said, you can't choose both the spirit as well as the gross or the mammon. If you choose the world, then you have to leave the spirit alone. And if you catch hold of the spirit, then you have to give up the gross. So you can't be moving in both directions. Either you go towards the Annamaya Kosha or the gross body and live a sort of life which animals live. That is common. Animals live a gross life with some life force, a lot of life force, in fact, prana, which animates them. So sometimes you find the animals have much better gross bodies than us. They have better powers of digestion, they have better powers of expression, action, because their whole energy, everything is concentrated on the gross. But as man becomes more and more intellectual, his thinking becomes more and more finer. Then he transcends even the Manomaya Kosha, transcends in the sense he gives less importance to that and focuses on the Vijnanamaya Kosha, that is the intellectual sheath or the intellectual level of our personality, that aspect of the mind which can discriminate between desirable and undesirable, between the good and the bad, between the gross and the subtle. So here this poem says that my mind had risen, mind to that rarefied atmosphere. When a kite flies, so a kite, a simile is given here of a kite. So this poet says And Sri Ramakrishna is singing this song in the gospel. He says, the kite of my mind was soaring high up in the sky of the feet of Mother Shama. So that is divinity. When he was aspiring to touch that divinity, which is beyond even the Anandamaya Kosha, the fifth level of personality, where there is total existence, the idea of eternal existence, eternal consciousness, and eternal bliss. So that is untouched by the five layers of personality which constitute a human being. So that is the essential divinity which we worship. Whether we worship a deity, male or female, these are just deities whom we worship, but the actual worship is that of the Satchidananda Brahman, or that which is known as existence, consciousness, and bliss. So David Bentley Hart, in his book, he mentions the idea of God. What is the idea of God? He says the best possible definition of God, if it can be given. God cannot be defined, of course, by our limited intellects, but if at all a definition has to be attempted, then he says, after comparing all, he is a theologian, and after comparing all the theologies of the world, all the religions of the world, he comes to the conclusion that the best possible conception of God that a human being can have is that of eternal existence, existence which is not curtailed at any moment of time, which is not bound by time, that immortal self within, and eternal existence, eternal consciousness, that consciousness which always remains at the as a substratum of all our awarenesses, the little awarenesses of the body, of the mind, and of our breathing, of our prana, and all the other levels of our personality. There is the witness self, which is always consciousness, which is always conscious. So the consciousness is reflected upon the body, mind, and body mind complex, and we get our individuality, the ego, which is just a reflected consciousness of that supreme consciousness. So God can be defined according to Vedanta as the eternal existence, eternal consciousness, the pure consciousness which is unlimited, which is not limited or restricted to a particular body or a form or a shape. But we superimpose it on anything, any object. Even if you superimpose it on a deity or a god god with form, or a symbol like the cross or any other symbol, religious symbol, we can make use of that to project the idea of infinite on the finite. So existence, consciousness, and bliss absolute, not that limited joys which we get in the gross world. It is an unlimited bliss. So this is the best possible definition according to David Bentley Hart, when he says that after going through all the theologies and all the philosophies and all the uh, experiences of great spiritual personalities the world over, he says, I come to the conclusion that the best possible definition of God, the God experience, as it is, as he names the book, the God experience, existence, consciousness, bliss absolute. So that is how we define. So from that state was personified in the feet of Mother Shama. Any personal God, Hinduism, people criticize that Vedanta believes in so many gods. It's not the question of so many gods. It's not polytheism. People say that monotheistic religions are better because your religion is polytheistic. Vedanta is polytheistic. It's not polytheistic. It is a whichever form of God the devotee or the aspirant chooses, he has to superimpose this infinite quality, the infinite superimposition of these infinite qualities of Brahman, or the God or transcendental Brahman, on this immanent God, whether it is nature, Prakriti, which has been personified as the Divine Mother, Prakriti, and Purusha. The Purusha acts, the light of Purusha is reflected in the Prakriti. So The kite of my mind was soaring high up in the sky of the feet of Mother Shama. So the devotee says, my mind was taken to that rarefied atmosphere where I was meditating on the Mother Shama. And I was in bliss because I was one with the spirit, the divine spirit which is within. But unfortunately, the wind, just as a kite comes down because of the force of the wind, the uh, the wind somehow disturbs it and it starts circling and then comes down to the ground. So here the poet says, the rough wind of my misdeeds, the misdeeds or the karma which I did, it the rough wind which it created, my actions, most of the evil actions that I did in my life, they created a rough wind and made that kite which was soaring high in the sky at the feet of Mother Shama, that is in divine bliss, it circled and came down to the ground because of that wind. And Maya's pull made it heavy and I could not raise it again. When the kite came down, the Maya's pull was so much that it did not help matters. It did not go up, rise back again to that level. So what he is saying is that no matter how much spirituality you practice, how much concentration you attain, the grip of Maya is such, and our karmas are such, the misdeeds that we do somehow has the capacity to drag us down to the gross. So we have to be very careful. Then he says, it got entangled, the kite. Kite is symbolic of the jiva, the human spirit or the human soul. It it has to encounter so many problems. First, the baggage of karma with which we are born. According to Vedanta, we are all bound by our own baggage of deeds or misdeeds which we have done across several lives. That is one thing which explains in a scientific way why we some people suffer and why some people don't suffer. So it's very logical to assume that some people are born with privileges and we think how what have they done to deserve it? But we don't realize that the baggage of good karma that they were born with perhaps enabled them to get a good life or maybe a so-called pleasant life. But some people suffer. So somehow the misdeeds, the rough wind of misdeeds, as the poet expresses here, is responsible for all these things, and it decides whether your mind will be on a higher plane or will it come down to the gross world. Then he says, this kite got entangled with the string of love for wife and children. So here the poet is explaining the importance of renunciation in spiritual life. So man is born, practically when he is born to be free from the bondages of the gross. But the moment he starts growing up, the world imposes some kind of bondage. So here the poet very poetically says, the string of the love for wife, he gets entangled in that. The sadhaka who was born free, he gets entangled in with the string of love for wife and children. So the more one has attachment to these things, wife and children, he gets entangled in that and then he gravitates towards the gross. Alas, its crest of jnana is rent. One may pull at it, but it falls down. So the crest of the kite, which was enabling it to fly high, that is broken. And when it is broken, then it starts further falling down further. It has lost its crest. It has lost its wisdom, its discrimination. So how can the kite fly? The human soul, if it stops discriminating and starts behaving like animals, like an animal, then obviously he can't remain afloat for long, just like this kite. It will take a downward turn and it will ultimately fall because the rough wind of deeds karma, the karma is pressing upon the individual soul, and it is trying to drag it down. So one has to take a lot of efforts to see that the kite flies. The six passions, the six passions which are described in Vedanta, anger, jealousy, fear. So there are envy and so many other six factors are there, six passions are there. So passions have been broadly classified into six in Vedanta. So the six passions have overpowered this kite. The wind of six passions is always trying to push it down. Even if the person who's pulling the strings is trying to fly the kite higher and higher, it had reached great heights, but unfortunately, the wind, the howling winds, have forced it to come down, and then these passions have further overpowered it. But it was tied to the string of bhakti. Bhakti is devotion, spiritual devotion. So originally, it was tied with the string of bhakti. Bhakti was enabling it to go towards the divine, towards the supreme, the divine mother. But while playing, while pulling the string, it somehow fell into illusion. Illusion in the sense, the Maya, the confusion which came, did not enable it to fly further. And the movement of the kite was restricted. Instead of going up, the string, rather than taking it up further towards the divine mother, it started coming down. Then Naresh, at the end, the last line says, rather than weep or laugh, it was better not to have come to play. So he comes to a conclusion. I don't know why I came to play in this world, because the effect of coming to this world, for most of the people, unless they are careful, their kites are always bound to be caught. The six passions, the love for wife and children, and so many things, the whole concept of the gross world dragging the spirit down to the earth, that is explained in this beautiful poem. Then Sri Ramakrishna is singing this song with the other devotees and is also dancing with them. Kirtan means normally, along with the song, there will be chorus, and when the people are singing in chorus, the the participants of that song who do kirtan, they start dancing in joy. So there's a lot of music. There is a wonderful uh, rhythm to the song, so that they can dance to that rhythm, and plus there is a deep meaning involved. So Sri Ramakrishna, being a great musician himself, if you see in the gospel, there's so many songs. In fact, there are 72 songs which he himself has sung. He joined, of course, there's not his songs composed by some other great poet, but poet or maybe great saint. But he used to love these songs and very often invite people. When people used to come and sing it, himself would participate and sing and dance with that. The next song is The Bee of My Mind. Now here also it's a Kali Kirtan, or a song dedicated to the Divine Mother, Shama. The bee of my mind drinks deep at the blue lotus-like feet of the Mother Shama. So here also the devotee says, the Kamala Kanta, who is the uh, composer of the song, he was a great saint himself, a great devotee of the Mother. He says, the blue lotus-like feet of Shama, they are blue in color. They say Krishna and Kali, both of them have a bluish hue to their body. So that's why they have been named as Sham. Krishna, one name of Krishna is Sham. And the Divine Mother, Kali, is also known as Shama, the feminine of Sham. So Shama also means dark, the dark one. So blue color, deep blue color, it very often appears as black. There's a philosophy behind that iconography and the color of the Divine Mother also. But at the same time, here he says the blue feet of the holy Shama, the honey of all worldly things, the flowers of lust and so on have lost their charm. I mean, normally, when a bee comes, it is the honey of that flower attracts, the nectar which is there in the flower. So that attracts the bee and it makes honey. So, but here, this flower, uh, the honey of the world. I mean, he's trying to say that the ordinary flowers have lost their charm because the lotus feet of mother is so beautiful. The sadhaka is so much attracted to the lotus feet of the divine mother that he just forgets the worldly pleasures. That is what all the flowers of lust, greed, jealousy, anger, and all those things have been left behind. He has nothing to do with the world. So all the temptations, the honey of the worldly things means all the temptations that bind a person to this world have lost their charm, because there is a much beautiful flower, the lotus feet, like feet. His mind is so much focused on the divine feet of the divine mother that he is not interested in the ordinary flowers anymore. So the five elements, the feet of the mother are black, so is the bee. The black has mixed with black. It's a very significant thing. Now the bee of the mind, you see, the poet has used this simile to such a wonderful, such a wonderful effect. The black bee is black, and the honeybee, I mean, is black in color, and the feet of the mother, which is deep blue, it's also black. So black has mixed with black, means when you where mind is soaked with the idea of divine, it is suffused with the idea of the divine, which is represented by the feet of the divine mother. So that is the symbology which uh, Hindus do, especially the Shaktas do. So they say the mind gets colored by the hue, by the infinite ideas of Satchidananda, who, whether it is expressed through Vishnu, Krishna, or through Devi, or through Shama. So the black hued mother and the mind of the aspirant, the bee, which is like the bee, both being of the same color, there's no distinction. And that bee is not attracted by the worldly colorful flowers anymore. No matter how colorful the flowers of the world are, Kamalakanta says, my mind has been attracted to the lotus. Such a beautiful way of expressing the higher spiritual truths. These songs are deep with meaning. It's not just a song which has music and rhythm, but the deep meaning which it conveys. And Sri Ramakrishna used to go into samadhi by listening to these songs. So he says, black is merging with black. The black feet of the of the divine mother, and the black bee of the mind, that is also black. So both these things merge together and they become one. So once one starts one sadhana and the mind becomes absorbed in the object of meditation, it simply merges with that. You get the qualities of the object on which you meditate, whether the object is a deity or a concept. It gets colored. That's a natural tendency of the mind. If the mind day and night thinks of the worldly things, it gets colored, and then it takes that shape, it takes that attitude. So to think about noble things, to meditate upon noble ideas, noble personalities, or noble conceptions of God, they elevate the manas, the reactive mind, to the level of buddhi and take it further and raise it to greater heights. So the five elements, turbulent and fascinating, have broken away on seeing this play. The five elements means the five senses, or the five elements. The five elements: earth, fire, the solid, liquid, gaseous, and all the different states which conjure up the magic of Maya, as they say. The whole gross universe, as it were, have broken away when they see that the mind is no longer interested in them. The mind has a peculiar nature. It can take the shape of the thing on which it focuses its attention on. If the mind was busy with these five elements, the gross elements, and was busy with the gross, then it would have taken that shape and it would have gone degraded further. But now, because the mind is meditating on the supreme, on the divinity, which is on the lotus feet of Mother Shama, then at that mind now is detached from the senses, the five elements, the senses as well as the sense objects. When the senses are no longer running after the sense objects, they all fall away on seeing this wonderful play, wonderful devotion. The wonderful devotion raises the mind and prevents it from getting the color of the world. So it raises the mind, it goes up. Then Kamalakanta says it is only now that Kamalakanta has seen the fulfillment of his hopes. So Kamalakanta, who is the spiritual aspirant in this case, is singing this, composed this poem. He says now he has seen the fulfillment of his hopes because his mind has now merged on the lotus feet, in the lotus feet of the Divine Mother, and it has become one. So all his hopes have been fulfilled. The lower hopes have all dropped down and vanished because they were all transient hopes, clinging on to some bits of clay or some gold coins and some gross things. That was what the mind was doing. And every time the mind clings to these temporary, transient things, the moment it is taken away from you, the mind gets into a state of depression. It falls down, it gets panicky, it feels a lack of sense of security. When the things which a person has with so much effort gathered around himself, when they fall away, when they are snatched away from you, either by nature or by your foolishness, these things vanish. And when the temporary things, the gross things of the universe vanish, the ground below the feet of that personality just collapses and he falls into dismay, in depression. So he says the five elements, now they have withdrawn themselves by the power of the Divine Mother, the power of spirit over matter, the power of matter. The power of spirit over power of matter is the entire history of spirituality. If you trace the progress of religion, whether it was Christianity, whether it was Hinduism or any other religion, it is always shown that the triumph of the power of spirit over the power of matter is what makes a civilization, a society, or a human being really spiritual. So, if so, that's why Jesus Christ did not bother when he was crucified on the cross, because he knew all the gross things, this body, including the body, have absolutely no value because man is spirit, primarily his spirit. And so he had the last laugh when he said, what are these foolish people doing? By crucifying the body, they think they are crucifying me, but I am the spirit. So, with that feeling, that triumph of the spirit over matter is what true spirituality is. That is what is expressed by this song, that the mind is no longer attracted to the gross, it has been focusing on the infinite spirit. And that is why he says Kamalakanta has seen his fulfillment, seen the fulfillment of his hopes. Joys and sorrows are the same to him. The ocean of joy rolls on because he has touched that ocean of joy, and the little joys of sorrows which a human being is buffeted on the waves of the ocean of the world. We are buffeted by the waves, the joys and sorrows, alternate joys and sorrows. So these are causing a lot of problems to the saint says, the poet says. But for him, these waves do not really matter because his ocean of joy is rolling on. He is just having a great time. So then the kirtan still continues. And then the poet wonders, what a wonderful machine, what a wonderful system, or what a wonderful prakriti or nature that Ma Shama has built. In this machine, 3.5 cubits high, what prank she is playing? I mean, the Shama who has embodied herself as a deity or as an avatara or as a saint. So they play this whole drama through this 3.5 cubit high personality. Oh mother, you yourself are working this machine holding its cord. The machine may say that I am working myself, but it does not know who is working it. There's some power behind the machine. Machine is just a dead thing. Unless energy is supplied to it and somebody makes it work, it does not work. So we are like robots. So the poet says that the mother herself is the primary primal moving power behind this human frame of ours, and we, out of ignorance and egoism, we think we are moving, but it is she who is holding the chords and she is playing the doing the whole drama, and the machine is moving because of her grace. But the machine thinks I am working myself out of ego. It does not know who is working it. Whoever finds the mother remains a machine no more. So we, if we have to cease to be automatons just to remain as machines, be at the mercy of the forces that run that machine, then we have to cease to be machines. We have to cease to live this artificial existence. We have to live in the spirit. Yet some machines have even bound the mother herself with the cord of love. So he is speaking of the great saints or the great incarnations of God, who, though they are born in a physical frame, their devotion and their uh, wonderful love, the immortal love or the immortal devotion they have, they bind even the Divine Mother. So it's a very, very poetic way of saying that the devotion of the devotee binds the mother, and she is forcibly made by the devotee's love. She is forced to shower her grace upon her sadhakas, upon her children. So one comes to this world to throw dice. Now, this is what we all do. We live on probabilities. We are, as it were, the poet is comparing our life as a game of dice. So we come here, we take a chance. Coming here, I had entertained so many hopes. So whenever a gambler gambles and he plays dice, he always expects to win. And he hopes. But what does this hope do to him? To hope for hope is a low state of mind. You see how beautifully the poet has explained. Hopes is good, but hope to hope for the sake of hope is a low state of mind, because ultimately first I got a 5 of dice, then a 12 and 18 and 16. The way they come again and again, I too came to the world. Oh mother, when I got the next 12, I got entangled with the 5 and 6. Now what he means here is, it's 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 a figurative way of telling. 6 means the 6 passions which we described. So, and the other 5 means earth, water, fire, air, and space, the 5 elements which comprise this whole world. So he says the dice, they say the dice, when unless you uh, score 12, you don't, I mean, oh mother, when I got the next 12, I got entangled with 5 and 6. Did not put the dice in such a way. Normally the dice, they say 6 and 6, 12 is the maximum. So I came to this world and hoped that when I roll my dice, it will be 12. But sometimes I got entangled with the 5 and 6. What he means is this 5 and 6 are the sense organs and the 6 passions, which again made me stuck to this world. The devotees are enjoying themselves. Now the song is over and Sri Ramakrishna now gets up. A number of devotees have arrived in and around Thakur's room. Sri Ramakrishna is going towards his room from Panchavati. M is with him. They meet Trailokya as they reach Pakultala. Trailokya offers. Trailokya is a singer, a Brahmo singer who used to normally sing these songs. So Sri Ramakrishna tells Trailokya, they are singing in Panchavati, why don't you go there? So Trailokya has come little late. The singing is already going on. And Trailokya being a great singer himself, he said, you go there. Trailokya says, what shall I do there? Sri Ramakrishna says, why? It's very nice. Do see it once. Trailoka says, I have already been there once. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, good, very nice. So the songs are over and a new topic begins. It's 5:30 or 6. Sri Ramakrishna is seated with devotees on the southeastern veranda and is looking at the devotees. So now he is talking something of how to live in this world. Sri Ramakrishna is telling Kedar and other devotees. He says, a person who has renounced the world only repeats the name of Hari. He has no other work to do. So, as Jesus said in the Bible, love God with all thy heart, all thy mind, and all thy soul. So, he has no other work to do. So, that is what the highest devotee does to attain God realization, to have God experience. This is what the prophets and saints of the past have said. Love God with all thy mind, with all thy heart, with all thy soul. So Sri Ramakrishna says to Kedar that if one is a true devotee of God, then he renounces the world and repeats only the name of Hari. He has no other work to do. If he meditates on the Lord, there is nothing to wonder at. For such people, if he doesn't meditate, there's nothing to wonder. If he doesn't contemplate on the God, having renounced the world, then and doesn't repeat the name of Hari, everybody will speak ill of him. But if a family man repeats the name of Hari, people consider it to be heroic. Just see, King Janaka was a great hero. He wielded a double-edged sword, one of Jnana, other of Karma. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that it is very difficult to do work on one hand, but at the same time be focused on the Lord. And very few, like King Janaka, were full of wisdom. At the same time, they were perfect in their activities, their outward life. But everybody cannot be that. On the one hand, he was a perfect knower of Brahman. On the other, he engaged himself in all his worldly and administrative work. Then, an unchaste wife attends to her household work with great care, but she is constantly thinking of her lover. Sri Ramakrishna gives another example that a person, perhaps a lady, may be an unchaste woman, she has a lover, but at the same time, though she is doing work in society, working for her livelihood, her mind is always thinking of the lover. So that is what Sri Ramakrishna, giving this example, he wants to say that we may live in the world, it's not a problem, but at the same time, our mind should not be attached to the world. It should be focused on God. It should be a God centered life. The company of holy men is always essential. Holy men bring you in contact with the Lord. Kedar says, that is true, sir. Saints come for the good of mankind. They are like the railway engine which has many compartments attached to it. It pulls them all. Or they are like a river or a reservoir. They quench the thirst of many people. So Kedar, who was sitting there, he is trying to explain some examples which Sri Ramakrishna himself gave that the holy men are like the engine. When they come, they drag all the people who are attached to the world, and once one attaches oneself to that engine, then they are saved. Or they are like a reservoir where people can come and satisfy their thirst, the real thirst uh, which we have for the divine. We have a thirst. We hope after hope to attain something. We don't know what we have to attain, but the goal of life is not clear till the highest purpose of life is explained to us. So the devotees now gradually prepare to go home. One by one, they prostrate before themselves before Sri Ramakrishna and take the dust off his feet. Addressing Bhavanath, Sri Ramakrishna says, don't go home today. I'm greatly inspired when I see you people. Bhavanath had not yet entered family life, though Sri Ramakrishna liked him so much. Unfortunately, this Bhavanath, after the passing away of Thakur, or even when Sri Ramakrishna was sick and he could not, he somehow got caught in the world, because one of the reasons was he was about 19 or 20, fair complexion and had a beautiful body. And he had spiritual traits which Sri Ramakrishna appreciated. But Sri Ramakrishna had warned him that the world is ready to snatch you away. You are such a wonderful, there are such wonderful spiritual prospects. So Bhavanath, though he was highly considered to be very highly spiritual, somehow got caught. So here M is mentioning, and this was the state when he had not yet married. He begins to shed tears at the very mention of the Lord. Sri Ramakrishna looks upon him as Narayana. He was in such a high spiritual state, and even Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about his devotion and all those things. But unfortunately, he could not. So that is why this song becomes so significant, that no matter the kite, how high it flies, but the winds of passion and the winds of Maya somehow pull the kite down to the ground. So Bhavanath's example is given here. And though he was a very accomplished devotee, later on we see that he unfortunately could not sustain that spiritual life, and he had to, whatever hopes Sri Ramakrishna had in him. In fact, Narendranath, who later on became Swami Vivekananda, used to sometimes ask the master how nicely, he's going into a state of bhava. Why don't I have it? But of course, Sri Ramakrishna clarified. He said, it's like you are like a big ocean, whereas Bhavanath is like a small lake. Not Bhavanath, all the devotees who experience all these ecstasies and all these things, they are not the essentials of spiritual life. It is purity, it is the eternally, these people, vairagya or the dispassion for the world and purity is more important than having these experiences. However nice these experiences may be, ultimately this Bhavanath could not sustain his spiritual progress. So all the wonderful experiences he had in the company of Sri Ramakrishna could not be sustained because of lack of vairagya and purity. Purity and vairagya were again and again emphasized by Sri Ramakrishna as the essentials of spiritual life. Spiritual life doesn't have any meaning without purity and vairagya. So unfortunately, Bhavanath could not hold on to those things, and entered the world, even in spite of being warned by Sri Ramakrishna. He said, you have a wonderful nature, but unfortunately could not sustain it. So now we'll just try to answer a few questions if there are. We are running out of time. Yeah. Discrimination can choose the place high up where tough wind cannot influence the kite movement. It works like the intellect energy over matter. Does it make any sense? So goal can be achieved. I don't know what the question is exactly, but here I think the question is that can there be a place where the winds will not affect? Huh? So anyway, there is a place, of course, if you reach that state, the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it one will not come back. But that is not the case. In most of the cases, one cannot rise to that height. Okay, so I take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.